Shout out to each and every one of you guys out there. You know, one of the criticisms of Floyd Mayweather was that he ducked or he was avoided certain fighters that were available to face him. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So a good example of that was in 2007 after he had faced Oscar De La Hoya and Ricky Hatton. The division in which he was in was filled with some really good talent. And I'm going to show you at the end of 2007 what that talent looked like. So in 2007, in Ring Magazine's ratings, we had the top welterweights in the world. And at the top welterweights, we had Miguel Cotto, Paul Williams, Shane Mosley, Antonio Margarito, Zab Judah, Kermit Cintron, Louis Collazo, Joshua Clottey, amongst the really top guys. So when Floyd actually retired at the end of 2007, it was Miguel Cotto, Paul Williams, Shane Mosley, and Antonio Margarito to face, as well as, he faced Zab Judah already, and Kermit Cintron, as well as Louis Collazo and Joshua Clottey. Those were big names. And they accused Floyd of not facing none of them at that point in time. Now, what I want to show you guys is that sort of criticism that they give for Floyd Mayweather, I want to turn that criticism and use that same criticism on Sugar Ray Leonard to show you guys how unfair it is to say that about any fighter. And I think Floyd is just an example of some of the modern day fighters who have been criticized and scrutinized and unfairly. So the whole point behind this video is not to castigate again those who laid the foundation for us, but to show these people who accuse the present guys in the world, the present greats of the world, that if I were to use the same yardstick on the past greats, you guys would say that we're bashing the past greats. And all I'm saying is, don't bash the present greats because you want to big up the past greats. So let's get to it. Ray Leonard. So Ray Leonard, he began his career, and let's just go from when he was world champion, because other than that, it's not fair enough for Ray Leonard. So Ray Leonard became world champion in 1979 by beating Wilfredo Benitez. Okay, and went on to face his mandatory, which was Davey Boy Green. Now in 1980, he faced Roberto Duran and lost to him. 1980. Now I want to show you something. We're going to go all the way down to 1980, the end of that year, where he actually avenged his loss to Roberto Duran. Now in the year 1980, at welterweight, Sugar Ray Leonard had the following people he had to face. Thomas Hearns. There was Wilfredo Benitez, Pipino Cuetas, Duran, who he faced, and he beat, Randy Shields, Pete Ramsey, Adolfo Villaret. Now, of all these guys here, he had faced Villaret, he had faced Ramsey, he had faced Duran, he had faced Benitez. He had not faced Pipino Cuevas, but Thomas Hearns had faced Pipino Cuevas. So he had to face Thomas Hearns next. So he had a tune-up fight with Larry Bonds, in which he defended, and then after that, he went on to jump up in weight first, face Ayub Kaluli, who he beat, and then he faced Thomas Hearns, which was his mandatory. Alright? Well, not his mandatory. It was a guy to unify. Thomas Hearns wasn't the mandatory. This is Ring Magazine's ratings of welterweights. So in the year 1981, the year after, he faced Thomas Hearns. However, in 1981, there were other people he could have also faced. So there was Thomas Hearns, but there was also Pipino Cuevas, which Hearns had beaten, Bruce Finch, Randy Shields. I think he faced Randy Shields before. Milton McCroy, and Colin Jones, Bobby Joe Young. Okay? He didn't face none of those guys. Of course, they weren't top guys anyway, and they weren't world champions. So it didn't really matter. But the point is, we could use that stupid argument. He never faced Pipino Cuevas. He should have faced Pipino Cuevas. Pipino Cuevas was the top guy, and he never faced Pipino Cuevas in his career. Thomas Hearns did, but he didn't. Similarly, Thomas Hearns never faced. Actually, you know what? There's a bunch of stuff I want to say. One, Pipino Cuevas was one of two long-reigning welterweight champions. The other welterweight champion, for some reason I can't remember, but Wilfredo Benitez had beaten him to become the WBC welterweight champion. Just can't remember his name right now. But if I go and find Pipino Cuevas, not Pipino Cuevas, what stupid is I'm talking Wilfredo Benitez. If I find Wilfredo Benitez, alright, click on him for a minute, I'll be able to tell you who he was. Great welterweight champion. Hold on a second. Carlos Palomino. So, there are two people that Sugar Ray Leonard never faced, and they were still around. Carlos Palomino, who was not a world champion at the time, and Pipino Cuevas, who was also not a world champion at the time. Of course, it would have been nice for legacy, and Pipino Cuevas was still performing pretty well at the time Sugar Ray Leonard was world champion, even after he had beat Thomas Hearns. But he just don't. He just didn't beat those guys. He didn't face those guys. Okay? It is what it is. Anyway, Ray Leonard, he had nothing to prove anyway. He beat Thomas Hearns. Now, why I'm saying that is because the equivalent of this, he could have faced Pipino Cuevas, he could have faced Carlos Palomino. He didn't face those two guys. And there's legacy behind those guys. But here's the equivalent of that. Floyd Mayweather Jr. Floyd started at a much lower weight class, super featherweight. Gennaro Hernandez was the person he beat. Okay? After that, he faced his mandatory Angel Manfredi. Then he faced Carlos Rios. But let's just see what's happening in 1998. In 1998, after he had beaten Gennaro Hernandez, his division looked something like this. So he had Roberto Garcia, who he never faced in his career. Okay? He did face Angel Manfredi, that was his mandatory. He never faced Takanori Hatakeyama. He never did. Okay? He never faced Hong Yo Choi. He never faced Jesus Chavez. He did. Oh, actually, he did. He faced Jesus Chavez and Goyo Vargas. My bad. He never faced Anatoly Alexandrov, and Anatoly Alexandrov became a world champion while Floyd was a world champion. So he never faced these guys. Now, does that mean that he ducked all these guys? No. Just like how it doesn't mean that Ray Leonard ducked Palomino and Pipino Cuevas and a bunch of other guys that you saw there. And some of them were not world champions, but some of them were former world champions and had big legacies. But he didn't face them. Okay? Now, after he faced Thomas Hearns, Sugar Ray Leonard that is, he then faced Bruce Finch, which was one of the top guys. Okay? He faced Bruce Finch, and then he went on to face Kevin Howard, and he retired from the sport of boxing. Now I want to show you something, because this is very important. Remember, he had won a super welterweight title here in 1981. Now in 1981, this is what was happening at super welterweight, also known as junior middleweight. Sugar Ray Leonard had won the title. He could have rematched Wilfredo Benitez. He had, of course, beat Ayub Kalule. He also had, in that division, which is very important, Roberto Duran. Okay? And he also had, in that division, Maurice Hope. Now, he did eventually rematch Roberto Duran. Okay? This went in 1981, but he remained champion of the junior middleweight division beyond that. Thomas Hearns was in that division. Davey Moore was in that division. And most importantly, Mike McCallum entered that division. Now, Mike McCallum would be a name that popped up with the Three Kings, and he was a mandatory for Thomas Hearns. And Mike McCallum was a mandatory for Roberto Duran, and he ended up lining up himself so that he was in line, especially at middleweight, to face Sugar Ray Leonard. And Mike McCallum was a guy that was very much avoided, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So that was 1982. In 1983, Sugar Ray Leonard was still in the sport of boxing. I think he left in 84. Yes, in 84. So here he is, still in 1983. He had abandoned his post as junior middleweight. So Thomas Hearns got that post. But look at this, Mike McCallum still in line. Okay, it was Duran, Benitez, McCallum, Luz Mugabe, Davey Moore, etc. Now you would notice that Sugar Ray Leonard, he started fighting welterweights, so he went back down to welterweight. He never faced Donald Curry. He never faced Marlon Sterling. He never faced none of these top guys. Never did. Alright? Now, does that mean he avoided these guys? No. He went on to face, this was in 2000, what year is this? 2003. 1983, right? In 1984, when he left boxing, it was at the end of 1984. This is the welterweight division. Donald Corey, he never faced him. Okay. Simon Brown, he never faced him. Maurice Blocker, he never faced him. These are top guys. Marlon Sterling, these are all the top guys in the division. And in the junior middleweight division, there was Mike McCallum, who was mandatory for Thomas Hearns, who Thomas Hearns never faced. John Mugabe, Davey Moore, and Julian Jackson. They were only straight up killers in the division at the time. In the middleweight division, we had Marvin Hagler, Thomas Hearns, Mugabe also was in that division. And that's about it. Okay? So, the year that Sugar Ray Leonard left, it was loaded. Whether he was at junior middleweight or he was at welterweight, it was a loaded division. We had Curry, we had Brown, we had Blocker, we had Sterling. These were names in the division. There was McCallum, there was Moore, there was Julian Jackson, okay, and there was Hearns. Sugar Ray Leonard was nowhere to be seen. He left boxing, very much like what Floyd Mayweather did later on in his career. And I'm just showing you guys that you could easily say, why didn't Sugar Ray Leonard fight Mike McCallum? Why didn't Sugar Ray Leonard fight John Mugabe? Why didn't when John Mugabe was dangerous? Why didn't he face Davey Moore when Davey Moore was dangerous? Why didn't he face Julian Jackson? Julian Jackson was a killer. This is junior middleweight. I'll be looking at welterweight because he was fighting at welterweight, as you can see before he left, right? He faced Kevin Howard and Bruce Finch, right? Why didn't he face Donald Curry or the killers like Simon Brown and Marlon Sterling? Why didn't he face those guys? Great question, right? Well, first of all, in 1984, did Donald Curry win a championship? Let's go see. So Donald Curry in 1984. Well, in 1984, Donald Curry was IBF and WBA world champion. In 1983, he was the WBA world champion. So, all when Sugar Ray Leonard was around, Donald Curry was around. Alright, let's go to another guy. Because I think he became undisputed world champion. Simon Brown. What was going on while Sugar Ray Leonard was there? Simon Brown proved to be a legendary fighter, by the way. He fought in all kinds of divisions. But anyway, 1984, what was going on? Well, Simon Brown was still moving up the ranks. Okay? He was an undefeated fighter, moving up the ranks. And it was when he faced Marlon Sterling for the USBA welterweight title that he actually lost to Marlon Sterling. So, basically Simon Brown was still on the up and up, but he was high up in the rankings. Right? People were taking note of him. And then, of course, Marlon Sterling. Considers himself the best ever. Marlon Sterling was... Well, here's the interesting thing. Marlon Sterling had faced Donald Curry and beat him in 1982. He had also beat... he lost to Donald Curry in 1982. Beat Kevin Howard. Beat Tommy Ayers. And then he actually, in 1984, had his shot at a world title and was beaten by Donald Curry. Okay, so by the time, oh, he had actually fought Floyd Mayweather as well. By the time he became world champion, it was long past since Sugar Ray Leonard had left. He became world champion when Sugar Ray Leonard returned. He had beaten Mark Breland in 1987. Sugar Ray Leonard was taking on, at that time, Marvelous Marveling Hagler at middleweight. So Sugar Ray Leonard was no longer at welterweight. Okay, but Donald Curry was there, so he never faced Donald Curry. Okay, so what? So a lot of times people say, well, he didn't face Mike McCallum, he didn't face Donald Curry, he didn't face Michael Nunn, and so many other names I could talk about that Ray Leonard never faced. Pipigino Cuevas, Carlos Palomino. So what? Why do we say Ray Leonard fought everyone? What is he talking about? The top guys. Okay, he fought everybody. Similarly with Floyd Mayweather. So when you look at Floyd Mayweather, he didn't fight Roberto Garcia. Okay? Fought AJ McKinney, Carlos, this. Mayweather was trying to make a fight with, well, let me show you. So in 2000, at the super featherweight division, which is also known as the junior lightweight division, these were the names in the division, top guys in the division. Diego Corrales, who was the IBF world champion. Floyd Mayweather Jr., who was the WBC. Joel Casimiro, which I think was the WBA, and Acelino Freitas was the WBO, as well as Steve Forbes. Okay? Those were the top guys. You had Jesus Chavez as well. Floyd never fought Acelino Freitas. He never fought Joel Casimiro. He did fight Diego Corrales that same year. The important thing to understand is, a lot of people blame Floyd and say Floyd ducked Joel Casimiro and Acelino Freitas. But you could then say Ray Leonard also ducked Carlos Palomino, Pepino Cuevas. He also ducked Donald Curry and Mike McCallum. But that's not true. Because when you look at what Floyd did, he faced Diego Corrales next. When you face a guy that's better than all the other guys, the number one junior lightweight in the world, and beat him, then you can't say that you ducked the other two. He tried to make fights with Joel Casimiro and Acelino Freitas, never got it. Diego Corrales got the fights, Floyd didn't get the fights, and Diego Corrales dispatched of both of them and beat both of them. The point being, you can't call Floyd Mayweather a ducker and in the same breath say that Sugar Ray Leonard didn't duck. You can't do that. You have to be consistent. And this is the thing I think a lot of people miss out. Let's keep on going with Sugar Ray Leonard. Sugar Ray Leonard fought Marvelous Marvin Hagler in 1987. And he won the world middleweight title. Let's see what happens in the year 1987. So in the year 1987, this is the middleweight division. Okay? Sugar Ray Leonard would have been there. And then it would be Thomas Hearns, Marvin Hagler, Sumbu Kalimbe, and Mike McCallum. Michael Nunn as well. All of these people were in the middleweight division. Okay? So that when Sugar Ray Leonard was finished beating Marvelous Marvin Hagler, which is the best middleweight of the division at the time, alright, and just in case you don't know, just go to 1986 and have a look at it. Okay, just look the year before. Who was the guy that was reigning? And the best middleweight in the division was Marvelous Marvin Hagler. You also had Iron Barkley in that division, Michael Nunn. Okay, and these were the guys in the division. These were the names in the division. Alright, Sugar Ray Leonard beat Marvin Hagler, and then he never defended the middleweight title. He just retired again. Now, that may seem funny to you, and it seems as if he just ducked everybody else. He didn't give Thomas Hearns a chance. He didn't give Iron Barkley a chance. He didn't give Michael Nunn a chance. But really and truly, if you really pay attention, you can't say he ducked because he beat the best of the division. Similarly with Floyd Mayweather, you can't say that he ducked all the other guys because he beat Diego Corrales. Okay? And by the way, some of these guys were world champions in that division. In fact, hold on a second. In 1987, after he beat Marvelous Marvin Hagler, this is what the division shaped up to look like. So you had Thomas Hearns, Sumbu Kalimbe, who's a world champion, Mike McCallum, Michael Nunn, and Iron Barkley. Okay? Now, he then went up in weight to form a new catchweight, which was called the super middleweight division. He was fighting a light heavyweight in the name of Donnie Lalonde. Now, what I want to show you in the year 1987, what the light heavyweight division looked like. Donnie Lalonde was number 7 pick in the light heavyweight division. Sugar Ray Leonard picked him. Why? I guess because he decided he would go do the catchweight with Sugar Ray Leonard. Because there were better light heavyweights in the division, and you could say that Sugar Ray Leonard ducked all of them. There was Virgil Hill, who is a Hall of Famer. Charles Williams, who was considered the best light heavyweight at the time by the Ring Magazine. Bobby Siss, Leslie Tiger Stewart, who was the world champion at the time. Donnie Lalonde beat him. And Dennis Andrews. Now, the whole point behind it is not that Sugar Ray Leonard ducked all these other better fighters. The point is that people would allegedly say he ducked Virgil Hill, Bobby Siss, Leslie Tigers, because these better fighters. Why didn't he fight them, right? But he chose to fight Donnie Lalonde. You can't say he ducked because that's not a division he even was in. He never actually made the full weight of light heavyweight. He had to do a catchweight. And they called the division super middleweight. Now here's the catch-22 that gets even more interesting as we move along. So Sugar Ray Leonard faced Donnie Lalonde and managed to beat him. Donnie Lalonde, of course, later on in the fight, clearly was weight drained, and so Sugar Ray Leonard was able to get him out of there, which was really good. And it baffled everybody's minds. He went on to be in this special division known as the super middleweight division. So let's go to 1989. It's very important to understand why I'm using 1989, because once again, you're going to see some interesting things. So this new division was created because of Sugar Ray Leonard, who was at the top of the division, and Sugar Ray Leonard faced Thomas Hearns. He got a draw, but really Thomas Hearns beat him, and he'll even acknowledge that. But more importantly, this is a special division here. What's so funny about that is the next fight he had was in this division, as you can see here, the super middleweight division, where he brought Roberto Duran up from middleweight. So Roberto Duran was moved up from middleweight to face Sugar Ray Leonard. Now here's the interesting thing. He bypassed Michael Nunn, Sambu Kalimbe, and Mike McCallum, even Iron Barkley, and Steve Collins and Nigel Benn. He bypassed all these guys to face Roberto Duran. And here's the interesting thing. Roberto Duran at that point in time, and I think Leonard was about age 33, Roberto Duran had no titles at the time. So if we go to 1989, and we look at Roberto Duran here, Roberto Duran in 1989 had just beaten Iron Barkley to become the WBC middleweight champion, and Sugar Ray Leonard pulled him up to super middleweight after that. Now here's the interesting thing about that. What was happening in 1989 at that same time? Well, let's see. Michael Nunn. Michael Nunn in 1989. Scroll all the way down here. Michael Nunn in 1989 had beaten, was now the IBF World Middleweight Champion for one whole full year straight. So he had beaten Frank Tate to become the IBF champion, faced Juan Domingo Roland, and then he beat Sambu Kalimbe, knocking him out in the first round. Went on to face Iron Barkley, who was former WBC world champion, and beat him. This guy, Michael Nunn, was bypassed for Roberto Duran. Okay? He rematched Roberto Duran, a guy he had beaten already. Now, you could say, well, and Michael Nunn was higher ranked than him. Why would you pick Roberto Duran and pull him up to super middleweight to fight him? You think that was all? No, it wasn't. Sambu Kalimbe. Now, honestly, Sambu Kalimbe I thought was a good fighter, but I think Sugar Ray Leonard would still have beaten him. I'm not too sure about Michael Nunn or Mike McCallum. But Sambu Kalimbe was a great champion. And in fact, Michael Nunn, before he beat Sambu Kalimbe himself was a world champion. Alright, Sambu Kalimbe in 1989. So in 1987, Sambu Kalimbe was the WBA middleweight champion, and he was so until he was beaten by Michael Nunn. He was stripped of the WBA belt, unfortunately, before the bout. It was supposed to be unification. So he was the WBA world champion. He had beaten Mike McCallum to retain his title. He had beaten Iron Barkley. He had beaten Doug DeWitt. And now he was facing Michael Nunn, and Michael Nunn happened to beat him. Okay, great. The point is, anyway, Sambu Kalimbe was a world champion all that time, and Sugar Ray Leonard bypassed him as well. And then Mike McCallum, the last one of the set, who had been beaten by Sambu Kalimbe. Remember, this is the year 1989, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. This is the end of 1989. But Mike McCallum, right? Mike McCallum was a long-reigning super welterweight champion all through the 80s, from 1984 onwards. Okay, so he was a super welterweight champion. But in 1988, he fought Sambu Kalimbe, and he didn't become middleweight champion, but in 1989 he became WBA World Middleweight Champion. So the championship that Kalimbe lost, he got. Okay, it was a vacant champion, so he became the champion, a middleweight champion. Okay, and he had his first defense against Steve Collins, and he beat him. Okay, but the point is anyway that people will say, well, Mike McCallum was world champion. Why didn't he face Mike McCallum, right? And why that argument is ridiculous, just as the argument with Floyd, is because when you look at Floyd Mayweather here, okay, so with Floyd Mayweather in the year 2000, let's go to the year 2000 here. Okay, Floyd fought the best junior lightweight out there, which was Diego Corrales. So in this case, he kind of got a bly from Joe Casimiro and Celito Freitas. But in the year 2001, people could allegedly say, well, man, you ducked Joe Casimiro and Celito Freitas. All right. In the end, who Floyd fought next was Carlos Hernandez, who later became a world champion, and then Jesus Chavez. And when you look here, Jesus Chavez is there, but you got Steve Force. There's no Carlos Hernandez. He's not even on this thing. So it looks like if after Floyd had fought Diego Corrales, he ignored Joey Casimiro and Celito Freitas, and didn't even fight the guy who was Jesus Chavez, which is below them. He didn't even fight that dude. He fought Carlos Hernandez, then he fought Jesus Chavez. The same year, mind you. But nonetheless, he did that. Now, Jesus Chavez would later become a world champion, but these two world champions he ignored. Now, there's the same thing that happened with Sugar Ray Leonard here. But you cannot say, because he picked Roberto Duran, which was a marquee name, by the way, but he picked Roberto Duran, it doesn't mean that he ducked the other fighters. He never fought those guys, by the way. Never fought Mike McCallum. Never fought Michael Nunn. All right? Never fought any of those guys. But the point is, you can't say he ducked them. And this is the problem, that this is the hypocrisy and the inconsistency in how people accuse people. Floyd, you can't accuse Floyd of not fighting Celito Freitas and Joe Casimiro, but at the same breath, you're not accusing Ray Leonard of not facing Mike McCallum and Michael Nunn. You can't do that. And what I'm saying is, there was a reason why he faced Roberto Duran a second time. Money. With Floyd Mayweather, it was about mandatories. Okay, so he decided, I'm facing Carlos Hernandez, which was my mandatory, and then Jesus Chavez. And he was trying to make the fights with those two guys, but those guys didn't want to fight him. So he moved up in weight after Jesus Chavez, and he faced Jose Luis Castillo. This was in 2002, Floyd did that. Now watch this. At the end of 2002, at lightweight, Floyd had faced Jose Luis Castillo, but there was also Stevie Johnson there, Paul Spadafora, Leonard Doran, Juan Lascanzo, Angel Manfredi is okay, Artur Gregorian. Now Artur Gregorian, Paul Spadafora were world champions. Stevie Johnson was no longer a world champion. Good. Why didn't he face those guys? People say he ducked those guys. But if you fight the number one guy and you beat him, which is Jose Luis Castillo, then you can't really make that case, which is what Floyd did. He fought the number one guy, just like how Sugar Ray Leonard fought Marvelous Marvin Hagler and didn't bother to face McCallum, Thomas Hearns again, Julian Jackson, etc., etc., etc. Okay? The same thing happened here. But if you notice, in 2003, he fought Philip Endo and Victoria Sosa. This was an opportunity for him to face some of these killers, these lions. At the end of 2003, this is what it looked like in the lightweight division. So here he was. He had faced Philip Endo and what's the other guy's name? Victoria Sosa, instead of Juan Lascanzo, which he wanted to fight. He always mentioned that name, Juan Lascanzo. He also talked about facing Paul Spadafora, who was not there anymore for some reason. I don't know why. He never mentioned Stevie Johnson. He never mentioned Leonard Doran. He did mention Celito Freitas. So those were the guys. He never mentioned Artur Gregorian. Okay? So, at the end of the day, though, he had the opportunity to face Juan Lascanzo, but apparently he couldn't make the fight happen. And also, he could have the opportunity to face Celito Freitas. At least it seemed that way. Now, you can't blame him, really, because, again, he faced the top guy, and then after that, what do? Well, you should fight other top competition. But he ended up facing these two guys. And I kind of fault him for it, top ranked at least, for not matching him with some heavier stuff at lightweight, because he really was weak at lightweight. Now, here's the interesting kicker. So, Sugar Ray Leonard, he leaves boxing in 1989. Again, he's just gone. He takes a hiatus from boxing. Let's go back to 1989. And of course, in 1989, there's all this talent waiting for him. Okay? So, now he's got all these guys lined up for him in 1989. There's Michael Nunn, Kalimbe, McCallum, Barkley, Collins, Nigel Benn is stacked. Okay? He pulls Roberto Duran. You got Thomas Hearns on the wings in super middleweight, still waiting on him. As well as you got, well, that's basically it. Okay? But it was stacked. And he just left. Okay? Now, it's amazing how people have short memories. Why that points out, because it reflects on something else that Floyd Mayweather Jr. did. So, after Floyd Mayweather Jr. had moved up to lightweight, he faced DeMarcus Corley. This was in 2004. He went up to super lightweight. Now, here's the thing about this. When we look at 2004, at the end of the year, we're just going to look at the end of the year. This is what would super lightweight look like, or junior welterweight. It was Costa Tszyu, Arturo Gatti, Vivian Harris, Shambe Mitchell, Miga Cotto, Ricky Hatton, DeMarcus Corley, Lovemore Endu, Jesse James Layer. Now, he did fight one of the top 10 guys in the division, okay? So kudos to him. He just got into the division, he was a former world champion, and he went straight at DeMarcus Corley. Cool. What did he face after that? He faced Henry Bruselis. Henry Bruselis wasn't a top 10 guy at all, alright? Of course, that was in 2005. This was in 2004. He only fought for 1 year. He didn't fight anybody else. Okay, let's go to 2005. I'm trying to show you guys something, breaking it down in like tremendous detail. Ricky Hatton was the man now. Costa Tszyu got wiped out. Mayweather was the guy on top. You had Miga Cotto in this division. Still had Costa Tszyu there. Costa Tszyu had retired actually, so it wasn't going to happen. It was Jose Luis Castillo who followed him up there. Junior Witter, Carlos Mauser, Arturo Gatti, and Vivian Harris. Vivian Harris got his ass whooped. When Floyd was fighting DeMarcus Corley, Vivian Harris was calling him out, and Vivian Harris got his ass whooped. Okay? That's what it is. I think that's what happened. I may be wrong. I think Carlos Mauser beat him. But anyway, the point is that you had all these bad boys in that division, and Floyd didn't fight none of them, right? He ended up fighting in 2005 Arturo Gatti. Now, Arturo Gatti was the number 2 of the division. So when Floyd beat him, he kind of disappeared from there and moved into another division. I think he moved up to welterweight. But the point is, Floyd fought the number 2 guy, which was Arturo Gatti in 2005. Okay? Fair enough. But you also had Miga Cotto was on the rise. You know, you had Costa Tszyu was no longer there, so that's not one. You had Jose Luis Castillo. Okay, he fought Castillo and beat him twice, so okay, fine. You had Junior Witter on the rise, Carlos Mauser, who had just beaten Vivian Harris, and you had he beat DeMarcus Corley, and Lovemore Endu would have been no challenge. So at the end of the day, you still had all these names here. Well, that's the same thing like what happened with Ray Leonard. Now, Floyd didn't leave the division. He went on to beat Arturo Gatti in that division, and then after that, he went up in weight again. So he didn't stay in that division and face those guys. Alright? Then you had Shambe Mitchell and Zab Judah. Now, a lot of times when they say that a fighter fought everybody, he didn't literally fight everybody he was supposed to fight. And this is the case I'm trying to make with you guys. Okay? He eventually fights Miga Cotto, no doubt about it. He eventually fights, he's already fought. But he never fights Junior Witter. He never fights Carlos Mauser. He never fights Vivian Harris. Of course, Vivian Harris kind of annihilated himself by getting knocked out by Carlos Mauser, so it didn't really matter. But the point is that Vivian Harris would say, oh, Floyd ducked him. Floyd never ducked him. You just never presented yourself. You know what I'm saying? And you had the opportunity. There was a time when he had the opportunity. I think it was the Bruselis fight. But they actually wanted it to be the Vivian Harris fight, not the Bruselis fight. And Vivian Harris was like overpricing himself, apparently. That fight never happened. But at the end of the day, you don't always get everybody you want to fight. You can't fight everyone. Because Floyd wanted to fight Ricky Hatton, who was actually the champion, and that never happened at junior welterweight. People blame Floyd for that, but then again, you see that Ray Leonard had a similar situation. And I'm going to show you. In 1991, when Ray Leonard came back, I think he was 35 years of age, right? He was pretty old. Nonetheless, 1991. Let's look at that here. Ray Leonard came back and fought at junior middleweight. Terry Norris was the best junior middleweight at the time, and he still was. This is the end of the year. But Ray Leonard never faced Vinny Panziano. He never faced John David Jackson. He never faced Julio Cesar Vasquez. He's a bad boy. All right, Jorge Fernando Castro, who Pernell Whitaker ended up facing. He never faced none of these guys. Okay, and some of them were world champions. All right, he never faced them. Obviously, he faced the best, which was Terry Norris, but he never faced everybody else. You can't blame Sugar Ray Leonard because he didn't face all those other guys. And that's the kind of unfair thing that they do with Floyd Mayweather. Oh, he didn't face this guy. He never faced those guys. He faced Terry Norris. Terry Norris destroyed him. But the point is, and look at what the division looked like before that, just so you get a perspective of what I'm talking about. So this is the same junior middleweight division. Terry Norris is the guy that dominates everything. John David Jackson been there forever. Julio Cesar Chavez is in that division by that time. Wow. And Jorge Fernando Castro is in that division. These are bad boys. Okay, they're bad boys. And I mean, just because he fought Terry Norris, well, obviously he got beaten, so he wasn't going to face nobody else. But the point is, he chose to fight the best, so he fought Terry Norris. You can't fault him if he doesn't face John David Jackson, Julio Cesar Chavez, Jorge Fernando Castro. You can't fault him, So he tried, but he got beaten, right? And then, of course, in 1997, he faced Hector Camacho. My point, anyway, is being that Sugar Ray Leonard had a number of people he did not fight in his career. And some of these people were up-and-coming people. Some of these people were proven people and contemporaries of his. He never faced Aaron Pryor. Aaron Pryor wanted to come up and face Leonard. Never got to face Aaron Pryor. He never faced, a number of fighters that, even in the middleweight division when he went and faced Marvin Hagler and whoever else he faced, there's a lot of people he didn't face. But at the end of the day, what my point is, you can't blame a fighter because he didn't face everybody when you wanted him to face them. And the way back in the day was, it was so hyped up. Okay, so after Floyd had faced Arturo Gatti, which would have been the number 2 guy in the division, he wanted to face Ricky Hatton, but that didn't come about. It didn't work out. So he went up to welterweight, faced Sean B. Mitchell, and then he faced Zab Judah in 2006. Obviously, Zab Judah was the top guy. But look, I want to show you guys something else here. So let's go to 2006 because it gets to be very interesting how that division was looking. So in the welterweight division, there was Antonio Margarito. There was also Carlos Manuel Baldomir, right, who had beaten Zab Judah. There was Zab Judah. There was Miguel Cotto. Cotto's up in there. Louis Collazo, Kermit Cintron, Arturo Gatti, and Paul Williams and Joshua Clottey. This is the loaded division, right? So everybody was arguing that Floyd should face Antonio Margarito. But the guy who had beaten Zab Judah was Carlos Manuel Baldomir that year, was actually the guy Floyd faced. And then he faced Zab Judah. He did not face Miguel Cotto. He didn't face Antonio Margarito that year. He didn't face Louis Collazo, Kermit Cintron, Paul Williams, or Joshua Clottey. That was in 2006. Okay? What's very important for people to understand is, of course, you can only fight so many fighters at once, is that he faced basically the top tier people in that division. I'll show you something else here. Carlos Manuel Baldomir in 2005. I don't think he was there. I think it would be Zab Judah, right? Zab Judah was the man the year before. Then was Antonio Margarito. In 2005, when Floyd entered the division, Zab was the man. He changed hands with Carlos Baldomir. Carlos Baldomir became the lineal champion, actually. But in 2006, Floyd beat Carlos Baldomir, so he went down. Antonio Margarito was the number 1 in line. But when Floyd fought the lineal champion, which was above Antonio Margarito, he fought the best. And then he fought Zab Judah after, because he was going to fight Zab Judah anyway, and Zab Judah was dethroned. Antonio Margarito was overlooked clearly because Antonio Margarito was not the best. Corey Spinks and Shane Mosley were the other guys in the lineup. That was the year before. Louis Collazo was there as well, Kermit Cintron, and so on. Now, the important thing for people to understand is this. See, Carlos Baldomir was down there and he beats Zab Judah. Okay, so here's what really went on. Floyd never got to fight Shane Mosley. He was asking to fight Shane Mosley. Shane Mosley came down to welterweight and was actually fighting there. He didn't get his fight with Shane Mosley. He wanted to fight Shane Mosley. Okay, he also wanted to fight Yeah, Shane Mosley. Those are the guys he was excited about. Now, because you have all these names here, doesn't mean that Louis Collazo was ducked by Floyd, nor Kermit Cintron. There was only so many people you could fight. Let's go to 2007. That's the year when Floyd retired. Very much like what Sugar Ray Leonard did, where it was loaded with talent. Floyd Mayweather beat everybody. Mika Cotto was in line. Paul Williams was in line. They were all calling out Floyd at the time, too. Shane Mosley was in line. Margarito was in line. He had beaten Judo. Cintron was in line. Collazo was in line. Clottey was in line. It was loaded. And Floyd retired. Why? Because he beat the best of the best in 2006. Then he went up a weight class, which was junior middleweight, and he beat Oscar De La Hoya that year. If you look in 2006, this is what Oscar De La Hoya looked like. I think Oscar was in 2006, did his thing. So in the junior middleweight division, Oscar De La Hoya was number 6. Okay? At the end of 2006, he had beaten, I think, Ricardo Mayorga. Shane Mosley was the guy in 2006. Okay? 2007, Shane Mosley was the number 3 welterweight in the world. Oscar De La Hoya was number 3 junior middleweight in the world. Crazy, isn't it? I think Oscar got the number 1 spot while Shane Mosley had moved out of there, and Floyd beat Oscar, and then it went down. I think it was something like that. So Oscar was a world champion. Anyways, doesn't matter. The point is, when Floyd fought Oscar, he also had Corey Spinks there, Vernon Forrest, Ike Corte, and you even had Sergio Martinez. They were all junior middleweights. I remember Sergio Martinez calling out Floyd Mayweather. It's crazy. That's after he had beat Oscar De La Hoya, because Sergio Martinez was the mandatory for Oscar De La Hoya. And Floyd left the belt and retired and left boxing. Alright, this is what Sugar Ray Leonard did as well. And it's strange how everybody loves Sugar Ray Leonard, but they castigate Floyd for these things. But this is the very same thing Floyd was doing that Sugar Ray Leonard did. Right? Alright, so I want to show you one more thing. So other than that, after that, I think there was also Manny Pacquiao in the wings. We don't see Manny Pacquiao's name, but after Floyd had retired from boxing in 2007, after beating Ricky Hatton, it's very interesting. Manny Pacquiao came on the scene and he plummeted to the top when he beat Miguel Cotto. So it was Antonio Margarito who beat Miguel Cotto first of all. Manny Pacquiao started emerging on the scene in 2008. And by the time Floyd came back in 2009, at the end of that year, Manny Pacquiao was the number 1 welterweight in the world. And this is where all the ducking thing really truly started to erupt. Because Floyd did not face Manny Pacquiao in 2010. Immediately he came back, he tried to fight Manny Pacquiao in 2010. It fell through. This is where the ducking thing really started manifesting itself. Okay, and Floyd Mayweather was not the number 1 welterweight in the world. If anybody had to duck anybody, remember Floyd came back to fight Manny Pacquiao, it would be Manny Pacquiao ducking Floyd. Because Floyd came back to fight Manny Pacquiao, and a lot of people just don't get that. And what's weird is nobody talked about Manny Pacquiao ducking Shane Mosley that year, 2010. He didn't face Shane Mosley until I think 2011. Yeah, Floyd faced Mosley in 2010. All right, and Mosley was supposed to be the number 1 welterweight in the world because he beat Antonio Margarito. But anyway, that's another story. Pacquiao had beaten Cotto in 2009. Went on to face Joshua Clottey in 2010. Did not face Antonio Margarito. Did not face Berto. Did not face Luis Collazo. Didn't face John Zabek. Okay, he never faced these guys, Berto, Collazo, and Zabek. He never did it in his whole entire career. And my point being this: Berto becomes a world champion in 2010. Pacquiao still the man there. And in 2010, Pacquiao's negotiations fall through. He faces Joshua Clottey. He does not face Berto. He does not face Floyd. He's already faced Miguel Cotto. I think in 2010, he didn't face Shane Mosley until 2011, I think, or 2012. I can't remember. He faced Clottey. He didn't face Mosley. He didn't face Zabek. He faced none of these guys. He didn't even face Timothy Bradley. And what the weird thing about this whole thing is this: Pacquiao gets a pass, and Floyd Mayweather is the one that's ducking. Oh, Floyd's ducking Pacquiao. Oh, Floyd's not fighting any legitimate fights. 2010, he faced Shane Mosley, beats Shane Mosley, and they still give him shade. He was supposed to face Andre Berto next. He ends up facing Victor Ortiz because Victor Ortiz spoils the party in 2011. Manny Pacquiao, in the meantime, in 2011, goes on to face... Who does he face? I think he goes on to face Antonio Margarito. I think he faces Antonio Margarito at a higher weight class. I think it was junior middleweight. He faces Antonio Margarito, who's not even ranked here. But the point is that he goes on to face Antonio Margarito and beat him. Okay? Floyd faces Victor Ortiz, and Kell Brook appears on the scene. There's Mike Jones, John Zabek, Selçuk Aydin, and Shane Mosley. Alright? And again, look at all the names here. Kell Brook emerging. You have Berto. He faced Ortiz, who beat Berto. But you look at this, he didn't face any of these guys either. So you can't blame Pacquiao, because Pacquiao in 2011 faced a guy much bigger than him. And Floyd faced the guy that was just below him. Alright? And then, that was 2011. 2012, Floyd faces Miga Cotto, who was the #1 junior middleweight in the world, and Floyd beats Miga Cotto. So Pacquiao went on to face Antonio Margarito, who was not the #1 anything, and Floyd goes on to face Miga Cotto, who was the #1 junior middleweight in the world, and he beats him. In the meantime, there's Kell Brook there, Paulie Malignaggi, John Zabek, Timothy Bradley, Victor Ortiz, Devin Alexander. And remember, Timothy Bradley beats Manny Pacquiao in 2012. And Juan Manuel Marquez, this is 2012, right, stops him. Okay, so we have the emergence of new people in that division. Floyd instead chooses in 2012 to fight Miga Cotto. That year, that's all he fights. And that's that. Now in 2013 was a special year. 2013 was a very special year. Floyd beats Saul Canelo Alvarez, but he also had people like Erislandy Lara he could have faced, Carlos Molina, Austin Trout, Demetrius Andrade, Vanis Martirosyan, Willie Nelson, Isha Smith, Jermell Charlo. He didn't face none of those guys, right? And these were promising upcoming guys. Some of them were world champions, right? And then here in the welterweight division, he had Timothy Bradley. He never faced him. Juan Manuel Marquez. He faced him already. Manny Pacquiao. He hadn't faced him. Kell Brook, Robert Guerrero, who he faced early on in the year. Sean Porter, Keith Thurman, Paulie Malignaggi, Marcus Maidana, and Adrian Broner. 2013, he faced Robert Guerrero. He skipped all these guys, faced Robert Guerrero. Okay, he faced Juan Manuel Marquez already. And then in the end of the year, he faced Saul Canelo Alvarez. Well, you can't beat him. You can't beat that. That was the best guy you could ever face. So those two fights were good. In 2014, okay, again, he didn't face Manny Pacquiao. He didn't face Kell Brook, Amir Khan, Timothy Bradley, Juan Manuel Marquez, Sean Porter, Keith Thurman, or Robert Guerrero. He faced Marcos Maidana. Why? Marcos Maidana had beaten Adrian Broner, was the WBA world champion. Again, it would look like he just kind of ducked all these people. But in the end of the day, this was the fight that he picked. Pretty low, but he still picked. And if you go consistent to what Sugar Ray Leonard and all these guys did, you would see that, again, this is the way how it goes. Right? And Marcos Maidana was of his era, of course. So he didn't face Amir Khan, and Amir Khan was much higher ranked than Marcos Maidana at the time. But I thought Marcos Maidana was a better pick because he had a better win over a better opponent who was following the footsteps of Floyd at the time. So that works out well. But my point being anyway, that you can't say that Floyd didn't beat everyone in that year or in his time, because in 2015 he faced Manny Pacquiao and he beat Manny Pacquiao. Right? He beat Manny Pacquiao in 2015 and proceeded to face Andre Berto at the end of that year, and that was that. But my point being that this was the best the division had at the time. Of course, after he beat him, he moved down. He was the #1 welterweight in the world, and he beat him. and he was also the number 3 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. But he never faced Amir Khan, Kell Brook, Timothy Bradley, Keith Thurman, Sean Porter, Danny Swift Garcia, Errol Spence. None of these guys he faced at welterweight. Does that mean that he ducked all of them? No. In addition, some people talk about Winky Wright and how Floyd was making arrangements when he was at super lightweight, also known as junior welterweight, to face Winky Wright, who was a middleweight at the time and would have moved down to super welterweight. Jumped up 2 weight classes to face him, because that kind of backfired and didn't work out. He also was going to face, forgot his name. Hold on, I'll get his name for you. Corey Spinks. At a certain point, Floyd was trying to, they were trying to set up a fight with Corey Spinks. That fell through as well. He ended up facing Zav Judah, who had beaten Corey Spinks. He ended up facing Ricky Hatton, who had beaten Costa Tszyu. He ended up facing Miga Cotto later on, when Miga was much bigger and much stronger and was the number 1 super welterweight in the world. He went on to face Shane Mosley, who he always wanted to fight. And he also got to face Oscar De La Hoya, who he always wanted to fight, even though it was at the end of Oscar's career. So what I'm saying is that when you look at these different fighters, of course, when you look at the division, there's always good fighters there, and there are always world champions there that they could have faced. But what I'm trying to tell people is, you can't look at this guy and say he didn't fight everybody, Floyd Mayweather, and that this guy over here, he faced everybody. That's being inconsistent. And I think what's unfair about, when you're really dealing with boxing and with past and present greats, I think a lot of people give the past greats a lot of passes, quite frankly, because you have to understand, this is boxing, and boxing is the same in many respects, and it's evolved and changed in many other respects. And I just think that because the past was much more naive and people have very nostalgic feelings about the past, they feel that the past is people didn't conduct themselves the same way as they do today. But in fact, people are being harder on the present greats, I think, than they are on the past greats, because the bar has been lifted so high. Also because I think some of the present greats are very, like a guy like Floyd Mayweather is very, very much a conflict sort of guy. He likes to be in conflict. He seems to thrive off of that, like Donald Trump does. So I think that's another reason why a lot of people just don't like him, his personality. And I think that breeds an order where any statement he makes, people choose to disagree with it and just try to badmouth it. Even now, if you look in the news, there's something about him and DJ Khaled being in some sort of legal dispute about rights of something. And it seems that they like to post negative views about Floyd Mayweather because he's been such a great boxer and so confident about his skills and somewhat outspoken. So I think that's what happened, that Floyd doesn't play nice. He doesn't play how everybody expects a black person to be, more timid. Sugar Ray Leonard is more reserved, more classy in some respects. And I think because of that, people tend to like him more as a darling, just like Oscar De La Hoya is, and tend to attack Floyd and make him as if he's a villain, which is interesting. I think his personality is what I think sort of rubs people the wrong way, especially his public persona. Anyhow, I just wanted to share this video with you guys to show you just step by step and in a very long drawn out video that I think it's sometimes unfair how the present greats are treated versus the past greats. I took the creme de la creme of each era, Ray Leonard with the 80s and Floyd Mayweather with the 2000s and 10s, and I wanted to just show you how much I think people are biased concerning them and how they conducted their careers, but also to say that both fighters actually performed excellently in their careers and fought the very best that they possibly could fight at any given opportunity, even though they may have left their careers and it may seem like if they abandoned a wealth of competitors who could have given them a run for their money. Alright, so I hope that that's an enjoyable video that you guys can watch and learn something. You guys have a great one.